Looks like we're live. So I want to thank everybody for joining. And I want to let everyone know this is an interactive conversation. So if you have any questions for Amy, feel free to drop a comment and we'll get to them. Or any tips or anything that you guys want to add in, feel free to do so. Amy, thank you so much for joining ServiceLoop with us today, talking about how the industry has evolved for women. If you could go ahead and introduce yourself, your role at Thermo Fisher.
Sure. So I'm Amy Cendaña. I'm the Director of Global Service and Support Development at Thermo Fisher Scientific. I've been with the company for 16 years now and have spent all of that time with the company within the field service and support arena.
Perfect. I want to touch a little bit on your career journey.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about how you got to where you are and where you were before, because I think that's so key.
Yeah. So for me, I actually started as a bench scientist. I got a PhD in molecular medicine. I was doing breast cancer research and thought that was the end all be all. Like that's what I wanted to do. And so got a job working at a pharmaceutical company, still doing research in a translational oncology department. And when I got what I thought was going to be my dream job, found it wasn't really my dream job. However, spent a lot of time in the lab working with equipment, at the time specifically doing a lot of real-time PCR, helping others in the lab troubleshoot the equipment, figure out what was going on with their experiments. And at the time, actually, one of my salespeople that was working on the equipment suggested that maybe you would be better suited, coming to work for our company and in a role in field support. And so made the transition, became a field application scientist with what was Applied Biosystems at the time, which later through several mergers and acquisitions became part of Thermo Fisher Scientific. Worked in the field as a field application scientist for quite a long time, managed the field application scientist organization, and then around 3 years ago, transitioned into the global service and support development role.
Wow, that's such an amazing story, and the transition of that. Do you have any tips for other women that may be scared to or nervous or moving into field service? Like, how would you say that transition has been for you, or how would you, like, what tips would you give them?
Yeah, I think the thing that is oftentimes daunting about being in a field role is sometimes the amount of travel, right? And trying to find that balance and figuring out, how do you do all of that, right? Like, how do you have a family? How do you balance things with also needing to be on the road, to be in the field, to do all of that? And I think that's one way companies are evolving and changing, is to provide that level of support. And so I think it's, don't be scared, don't be afraid to take the leap. Like you can figure it out, right? You can make it work. And that I do think, because women in general are very good at like multitasking, and that's what a field role does really take, is you kind of being able to wear a lot of hats and juggle a lot of things. And you can find the support often, like within your company, within your management, within the industry, to make it work, even if you're balancing the demands of home with the demands of the field, the demands of customers, the demands of travel. And I mean, I would say over the years, I had a very small territory when I started, where I had kind of San Diego County, part of Orange County, and Arizona. And then there were times where our industry ebbed and flowed. And at one time I had San Diego County, Hawaii, and all of the mountain states. And it was a very large territory to cover. And you find ways to make it work and, figure it out. And I think the important thing also too is communication, right? And communicating with your leadership, communicating with your support system at home to figure out what you're able to make work.
Absolutely. And that's been mentioned before as far as leadership, just the transparency and communication between, field roles and the leadership. You mentioned support. So I'm curious, how is Thermo Fisher supporting women or families in general when it comes to field service? What programs or initiatives have you guys taken?
Yeah, so I think, and this is something I've seen evolve in my time with the industry. It's things like parental leave, right? For
Right.
whether it's people that are children, people that are adopting children, for both men and women in the industry, offering that leave for them to stay home when they have a new addition to their family. One thing I think that is a little bit unique to, well, maybe unique to our company, I think I only probably have exposure to us, is that they have these business resource groups, right? Both for women, to kind of support other women within, like kind of within the field, right? And they focus sort of more on like issues, I think, that impact women. Specifically, I've been involved in what we have that is a family support resource group, which is kind of how you balance the demands of caring for a family, whether that is children, whether it's aging parents, while carrying out your job duties. And it's a lot of best practice sharing. I mean, they're very like grassroots organizations, but sometimes you get the best support from other people that are living the same things that you are. And so the idea is really like bringing people together and understanding, like how do others deal with camps when kids are on break? How are others dealing with care for elder parents, and things like that. It takes the weight off when you get good ideas from other people because you feel like you're not alone.
Yeah.
And then
Mhm.
I think one thing, that's also really changed, and this actually came through the family support resource group, is for like nursing mothers that are traveling, getting support for them to be able to ship milk back home when
Yes.
they're on the road and they're traveling. That was something I didn't have,
Mhm.
and I was always trying to juggle that, figure that out, like, how do I do this? And now they've, they've helped invest and like supplement the cost of that,
Wow.
which has been great for
Yeah,
mothers that are trying to
absolutely.
deal with that when you're in a field role. You're still in a situation where you're nursing and you're trying to get that back home. I mean, that's a huge weight off the mind, and like great support for women that are out there in the field and trying to balance the field role with the demands of care at home.
Yes, that's very unique. I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
I'm glad you shared that. I love that Thermo Fisher is being proactive and that you guys have this group and it's evolved and turned into what it is now. And that's come out of it. Like it shows, just really how open-minded leadership is to change and making things evolve and work for their employees. So, within your role within field service, what are some challenges you've experienced and how did you overcome them?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say within my role, I would say one challenge I think that I maybe always, it's not really, well, it's something I think I had to like kind of search out and look for, was particularly early in my career, finding female role models
Yeah,
at a higher level, right?
yeah,
That had been in field service. And that's evolving, that's changing now,
right.
right? Where you see a lot of that. And even when I look like across our leadership, VP level, president level, there are tons of women now.
Yeah.
It wasn't something I felt like I saw as much early in my career, but I think
Mhm.
now it's amazing because you see a lot of strong women leaders.
Yeah,
But I would actually say that I got great support from my managers, and this is like male managers included, right, to help
mhm.
find like strong female role models to help mentor me, in my journey, like as a manager and as a leader. And so I think I learned a lot from them, not only about kind of being a female in a STEM career and in business, but even also balancing the personal side of things, right? Because
Right.
it's a different beast, and it's a different piece of things. And
Mhm.
I always appreciated that they were willing to be really transparent, not just about the career side of things, but also about the personal side of things.
Yeah, it's always good when you have someone or a group of people to fall back on that you resonate with in certain situations. So hearing that you had managers, especially male managers, that helped you find these
Yeah.
mentors, and women specifically, uh, how so you mentioned now, like Thermo Fisher, you guys have a lot of more women that are in these types of VP roles.
Hmm.
How have you guys bridged that gap between the male to female ratio? Because looking at it statistically, I believe it's maybe 9% of women fill the field service industry. So how you guys like kind of bridged that gap?
I mean, I think there's a general view that the more diverse a leadership team is, kind of the better ideas
Mhm,
that
right.
that come together, right? And I think that is sort of a top down kind of philosophy.
Yeah.
And so I think because that's coming from like the top level down, that's really, how the company views things and how they're looking at things. And so I think that's what's really helped, because it's like a pervasive company culture of that. And so I think that's really like what sort of helped bridge the gap. And then I think by seeing women in those roles, women that are kind of coming up through the ranks are
Mhm.
maybe less afraid or less apprehensive or feel like less like an imposter when you're
Yes.
trying
Yeah.
to
Mhm.
like go for that role, like go for the next level, go for the senior director, go for the VP. They're more willing to put themselves out there because they've seen another woman do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And so, like you said, it's always good to have a mentor, someone that's already done it and kind of filled it out. It makes you feel more comfortable stepping into a role
Right.
like that. Yeah. So, what has during your entire journey, it can either be with Thermo Fisher or even prior to, what is
Mhm.
like the biggest lesson you've learned throughout your career that maybe you want to share with other people?
I think the biggest lesson that I've probably learned is the answer is always no if you don't ask.
True.
And so you can't be afraid to ask the question,
Mhm.
because if you don't put yourself out there, if you don't ask it, it's an automatic no, right?
Right.
And so I think a lot of people, and I think maybe sometimes women especially, like we're afraid maybe our idea is not smart, it's not forward thinking, it's not right in the context of what's happening. And so we sit back, like we don't say anything, or we hope it comes up in a different way. But it's not an idea if you don't put it out there. It's not going to
Exactly.
happen. It's like a not starter. And so I think you have to be a little bold, be a little fearless, put it out there, and feel okay with it getting shut down and it being a no. Because
Mhm.
sometimes when it is a yes, is like where you find the most success.
Absolutely. And I love that you touched on that because just like you mentioned before, like diversity creates a space of collaboration. Like
Hmm.
when you have different minds. So I want women also to keep that in mind, exactly like you said. When you the answer is always going to be no unless you say something. So when you speak up and mention something, it may get the gears of someone else or someone else in leadership going. So it's
Right.
that collaborative like environment that it's creating. So, is there anything else, Amy, that you want to share with women that may want to join field service? Any tips, anything you want to leave this this service loop session with?
I don't think this is specific to women in field service, but I would say it's probably
Okay.
maybe specific to people in field
Sure.
service. I know there are always a lot of challenges. There are always a lot of like competing priorities when you're in a role like this, but something that I have always told my teams, and I continue to tell my team, even though with what we currently do, we're sort of at the crux between the field and product management and R&D,
Yes.
um, which is, if you always put the customer first and you keep the customer front and center in everything you do, like you're never going to make the wrong choice. And that's like what I always tell my team, what I've told my teams in the field, like if you're making the right choice, on behalf of the customer, you're never making the wrong choice. And so
Mhm.
that's what I think is always important for people that are in field service, for women that are in field
Yeah.
service, is, focus on the customer. And if you always keep them front and center, you're going to be successful in a career that, is in field service or field support. And you're always going to be making the right decisions. And I think that includes as you move up in leadership as well. Like if
Yes.
you keep the customer first and foremost, you're going to make the right choices.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. I feel like a lot of the topics and conversations throughout all of these field service events has been the customer centric approach. And it for sure win no matter what you do, like you said. So such great advice, Amy. Amy, thank you so much for joining us here on
Thank you, Kat.
ServiceLoop. I really appreciated you being on. And I look forward to rewatching this. If anybody has any questions for Amy, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn, for me as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. Bye.